since the DNC ended, there has been endless gaslighting about Kamala Harris's speech. No one's ever spoken about Palestine like that before. This speech really reflected a new tone. If you want to defend Kamala Harris and the DNC's decision to exclude a Palestinian from being able to speak at the convention, having a seat at the table, the thing that you guys always say that you do and strive for, then you guys can continue to play that song. But stop lying and pretending like her speech, the area specifically where she talked about Gaza, was somehow groundbreaking. Here's a video that somebody on Twitter put together that shows side by side Kamala Harris repeating the exact same thing, the exact same thing, the exact same empty script that Joe Biden has recited over and over.
President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done.
My negotiators, the foreign policy and intelligence community alike, have been relentlessly focused, not just on a ceasefire that would inevitably be fragile and temporary, but on a durable end of the war.
I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself.
Israel will always have the right to defend itself against the threats to its security and to bring those responsible October 7th to justice. And the United States will always ensure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself.
Because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7th, including unspeakable sexual violence.
Ordinary Israelis whose lives were forever marked by the shattering event of Hamas's sexual violence and ruthless brutality.
At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating.
And the Palestinian people have endured sheer hell in this war.
So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking.
Too many innocent people have been killed, including thousands of children.
President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom.
A better future for the Palestinian people. One of self-determination, dignity, security, and freedom.
Literally the exact same speech. Let's put aside for a second the fact that they continue to both repeat the mass essay propaganda hoaxes, despite the fact that they have already been debunked and discredited. But also, notice again, not only was that the same fucking word for word speech, so stop the gaslighting of, man, this is really a new tone. We haven't heard this said before. I am so tired of you guys calling offensive genocide defense. I just never want anyone to let it slip past you that they constantly use a passive voice when talking about Palestinians. October 7th was a massacre, could never be allowed to happen again. What's happening in Gaza, though, the genocide, that's just really sad. That's devastating. There's a lot of suffering happening. Who caused the suffering? Who dropped the bombs? Who knows? That passive language is done like that on purpose. To talk about what's happening in Gaza as though it's like a devastating tsunami or something that just happened and not a deliberate genocide being carried out on the people in Gaza. But here's that slimy sack of shit, Jamie Harrison, whose job it is to go out and lie for the Democratic Party and the powerful, trying to worm his way around being asked about the fact that the big tent diverse party full of gay people and lesbians and people of color, why Palestinians were completely silenced from the stage.
Did you have discussions about having a Palestinian speaker? And why, in the end, did you not have a pro-Palestinian speaker during the convention?
Well, that section of our program, I wasn't actively involved in. But, what we tried to do was to make sure we brought
You're
folks
just
on
the head of the
stage that
DNC.
respected, and had opinion points in all perspectives. And there were folks on that stage who had the reflections. I mean, the requests from folks in the various groups and pockets. We're a very diverse party. It is our strength, but also it can also at times create difficulties because there's the sheer volume of groups that make
We're a
up
very
almost,
diverse party, except for
in some fashion, we're a
Palestinians.
little coalition-like. And when you think about the Democratic Party, similar to what you find in Europe and what have you, have all of these segments and these groups.
See how he's like trying to dance around it? What's up with the
It was a 2 or 3 day discussion. Are you worried about, especially Michigan, Minnesota, and other places, by deciding not to have a pro-Palestinian speaker? What are you going to do to reach out to that community?
Well, I think the Vice President's speech laid the foundation for that. She spoke her truth. And I think her truth...
This isn't about her truth!
I think you see some semblance of all of that right in those communities. And so she'll continue to go and reach out to those communities.
All right, that's a fucking enough of that bullshit. What the fuck was that? Yeah, how are you planning on reaching out to Arab voters, Muslim voters in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania who weren't represented? Well, you know, Kamala Harris gave a really great speech where she spoke her truth. What the fuck? That question was not about her truth. It was about why was there no space given to any Palestinian voices, and do you think that icing them out of the party might actually be problematic for the swing states come November? I also love how his answer to the guy being like, you didn't have any Palestinian representation like at all on the stage. He's like, actually, we did. A couple other non-Palestinians kind of spoke for them, you know? I want you to imagine that exact statement being said about another marginalized community and how people would react. Well, I mean, yeah, sure, we didn't have any Latinos there, but, you know, we had an Asian come up and speak on their behalf. Close enough. I'm sure there were some gays. You are not going to just piss all over everyone's legs and convince them that it's raining. That speech was no different than the standard think tank line that has been used to shut down any real discussion about what's happening in Gaza for decades. And it's particularly egregious that it was used at the DNC, knowing that the administration right now and their policy positions is to continue arming offensive weapons to the regime that is carrying out these atrocities on the people of Gaza. As Zeb Jelani pointed out to one of the gaslighters on Twitter, when George W. Bush went further than what you are saying over a decade ago, you probably shouldn't be bragging about how hard you're working and how unprecedented this statement was. Anyone that actually cares about so-called diversity within the Democratic Party should be disgusted and outraged and find it absolutely unacceptable the way that the Palestinian American community is being treated within this party. Those of you who are openly attacking Palestinian Americans or mocking them, or even those of you who are just being silent, are showing your full fucking ass that you don't actually care about any of the shit that you preach. I think Jon Stewart, as Jon Stewart often does, did such a good job of just encapsulating this grotesque racism in one short clip.
And Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, gay Americans, Jewish Americans, Palestinian Americans.
Too real.
Well, to be fair, it was only 4 nights, 8 hours a night. Really, it's best not to think about the consequences of our actions over there.